So today we're going to be talking about interview preparation. And so one of the things that we need to understand when we talk about interview preparation is that a lot of times we think the interview is when we're sitting in the room and they're asking us questions, and that's the whole thing about the interview. What you're going to find out today is that uh, there are more there's more to it than just that. That when we talk about interview, it's also about uh, before, after, during. So we're going to look at that. So first of all, before we get moving too far, we want to talk about the ground rules for today. We want you to not be working on other tasks, participate in the discussions and the activities, stay curious, be coachable. Remember, this is a safe place. And remember, the only dumb question is the one that you never ask. So we really want you to be engaged in what we are doing today. So we're going to cover understanding job interview etiquette, how to answer questions, and we're going to talk about behavioral questions. These are the types of questions that are asked in interviews nowadays. You'll recognize them because they usually start, can you tell us a time about, or how do you do such and such? So those are the kinds of what we talk about behavioral questions. So we're going to be talking about that. So one of the things to remember when we talk about interviews is during interviews, it's important to remember that not only are the interviews or the panels, but also the other office employees are evaluating your fit for the job. And so we need to remember that. And I can't illustrate this enough except by a story of a friend of mine. He was a middle management in a company, and he was going to be doing interviews, and he was on his way to work, and he got cut off on the road on his way to work, and the person did a rather colorful finger image out the window to him and yelled some rather colorful words to him, but he just didn't let it go. He just let it go and just kept going to work. Well, he got to work, got to his desk, and they said, well, your interview is here for the interview. And he goes into the interview room, and who does he meet but the person who gave him the colorful words and image on his way to work? Needless to say, he did not hire this person. We need to understand that the interview really starts from the moment we leave our house to the moment we get back to our house. And so you never know who's looking at you. In some companies, they may ask the staff on the front desk, what was your impression of this person when they came in for the interview? And they may ask them, what did they do? What did they say? How did they act? And that will have an influence on the interview. So when we talk about the interview, we need to understand that the interview process covers all of these kinds of things. And in today's competitive market, those kinds of things with an interview are very important. All right, so we have a video here to talk about how we might ace an interview. What did you think about his tips for interviewing?
Very good.
What was that? Jennifer, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Very good ones.
Okay.
And Teo, we see your hand up.
I was raised by my grandfather. When he was working, he owned several gas stations. Remember with that. It's very similar to when I was growing up. So I think that as far as the principles of interviewing, it doesn't seem like a lot has changed. You still want to come prepared. You still want to what you can offer to that organization.
Okay.
And that's great to point out as well, right? A lot of these things are evergreen in the way that they rely on social skills, right, guys? Like they just rely on making sure that you are practicing those basics of marketing, right? And saying, hey, you have a need, I can fill that need, right? And doing it in a professional and courteous and sometimes fun way as much as possible.
Anybody else? And like I said, you're welcome to write it into the chat if you want.
Sam Cisneros in the chat says, great, super helpful. I really enjoyed what he said about making sure that you're polite to other staff as well, not just the hiring team.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like I said at the very beginning, a lot of times when people talk about interview prep, they think about just the interview part, but we really need to prepare across the board. And so that's real important. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to talk a little bit more here. So job interview etiquette, and some of this is going to be a repeat from what we heard in the video, but some things I wanted to reinforce. The important thing is, first of all, to be prepared. And one of the things is a lot of times people don't think, well, I don't need to do anything. If I have an interview, I just need to make sure I show up and answer the questions. The reality is you need to kind of think about what kind of questions do you think they're going to ask and kind of think of what your answers could be. Later on today, Josh is going to share with you a tool that we have available through our America's Job Centers, and specifically through their system called New Mexico Jobs. And this particular system gives people the ability to practice interviewing. And so Josh will be covering that a little bit later here on it. So just prepare. If you have somebody that you trust that can just kind of throw some questions at you, you can practice interviewing, answering questions with them. And especially if they don't give you what the questions are going to ask you ahead of time, it helps you to kind of think on your feet. So do find ways to prepare. It's really important. In that preparation he mentioned in the video, also research the company or wherever you are interviewing, find out as much as you can about it, and try to figure ways that how you can incorporate some of that information into the answers to the questions we had. We recently did some interviewing for our team here, and a couple of people started using phrases from our website and what our mission and vision was, and they used it, incorporating it into their answers to the questions. And so that's really, really, really well. Again, we've already talked about this in the video, and several people have mentioned, treat everyone with respect. You don't know who you're going to be, if you do get the job, who you're going to be working with. And the last thing you want to do is start your job and have insulted somebody that you're going to have to be working very, very closely with, especially a lot of support staff. Like for us here, if we have to go do travel around the state, we have a support person that we work really closely with. The last thing I want to do is get her mad at me, because then she could easily mess up my travel. And so we wanted, you don't want to build those kinds of things when you're possibly going into a job with them. Practice manners and confident body language, shaking hands, looking people in the eyes, that type of thing. Now, when we talk about things like that, we also understand that in some cases, culturally, that would not be the way to do it. And if that's the case, be respectful of those kinds of things. And lastly, sending a thank you note. I can't count the number of times that I've been hiring somebody, and what threw it over the edge was whether or not I got a thank you note from a person. I have two people equally qualified for the job, and that one that sent me that thank you note and the one that didn't, that said that person had some get up and go and they were going to be offered the job over the other one. It's those little things like that sometimes when it comes down to whether or not a job gets offered, is those little things that we do. I hope this makes sense to everybody. Okay, so let's talk about the behavioral questions that we talked about. In the interviewing process nowadays, a lot of the questions that are getting asked are behavioral questions and not necessarily yes and no questions or just content questions. What they're looking for is to look and see how a person is going to fit in with their team, the company, culture, and anything else like that. How you respond. Here's a good question. How would you respond if you were experiencing a lot of pressure at work? So this requires a rather extensive question or answer. I'm sorry, quite an extensive answer to the question. It's not something that you can answer in just a couple of words. It's going to require you to write to answer it more fully. These are the types of questions that are referred to as behavioral questions. Another one, describe a time when you were under significant pressure at work. How did you respond? Again, that's not something that's going to be able to be answered in just a few words. It's going uh, to give us more. You know, how did you respond in the past when you got feedback from your boss? That's another one of those kinds of questions where it's a behavioral question. And these are kind of important kinds of questions because it will demonstrate to whoever is doing the interviewing whether or not there's a fit, whether or not that this is a person that would work with our team. And that's some of the most important parts of dealing with it. So you're hearing me talk about these questions, and so you're probably saying, well, how do I answer these questions? We've got you here. There is a system called STAR, which stands for Situation, Task, Action, and Results. So what we want to do is we want for you to develop those answers using this. This will also help you with keeping things from rambling on. Because one of the things that behavioral questions does is it leaves it open-ended. And so a person could start talking for on and on and on about a specific thing and totally lose the interview panel. At the same time, since it's open-ended, if you don't provide enough information, it leaves the panel with not showing what's going on. So let's look at the STAR, what each letter in STAR stands for. Situation. They want to know what the context is of the story. You know, they want to know enough details to understand what happened. And so you want to make sure that you're providing as much information to situate whatever happened. Like, for example, if the question was, tell us a time in your recent employment where you had feedback from a manager or supervisor that you did not agree with. Okay, well, you're going to need to set up the context of how or why you were getting this feedback. So you want to set that up. You want to provide as many details as to what the feedback was about, so that those who are hearing this story will understand it. The second part of STAR is task. What was your role in the situation? Explain your role among the players involved without blaming others. This is really important. This isn't an opportunity to start throwing somebody under the bus. This is not an opportunity to start throwing your former supervisor or manager under the bus either. Because if you're starting to badmouth a manager or supervisor, then they're going to question, well, how loyal or faithful are they going to be to me if the person who's interviewing is going to be the manager or supervisor? So we question, but you just talk about, well, I disagreed about the information because I thought we needed to go in a different direction. That's where you're getting involved in it. You're wanting to show what the role is in it. You want to action. What action did you take? Describe the process or procedure you followed or created to solve the problem or diffuse the situation. Well, after we talked, I started to realize I needed to change this behavior in order so that this doesn't happen again. That was the action you took in that scenario. The results is the R. What was the outcome of your actions? If your actions led to changes or resolutions, discussions, what are those and how did it make a difference? Well, after I made those changes, the team dynamics changed in a very positive way, and we were able to see better results. Again, it's those little simple steps in answering those questions. You want to make sure that you're providing enough information. The other thing, when you're talking about these behavioral questions, you need to also be careful in that you don't start to use acronyms or jargon that those who are doing the interview may or may not understand, especially if you're changing from one career to another or changing into a different type of job. You want to make sure that you're not using jargon so that the person who's doing the interview doesn't understand. Does this make sense to everybody? All right. So we have a second video, and I'm going to stop the slide here and bring the video over. Okay, so here's the second one. This one's he's going to talk to us about panel interviewing and how to do well on a panel interview. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Josh, and he will talk to you about the big interview.
All righty, guys. So we're going to talk just a little bit about big interview. I'm going to kind of talk about it, based off the slide here in just a second, just to give you an overview. So Big Interview is an online platform designed to help individuals improve their interview skills and build confidence. All right. Its key features include practicing. So in other words, you can record and view your responses, learning. So you can access video training curriculums for your various interview topics or interview styles. Big Interview also, using AI models, is able to provide feedback, which helps you build skills, and you can even prepare for specific industries of job interviews. So I just want to ask first, how many people in this room are familiar with ONET? ONET Online? Has anyone in here used that before? Okay. Well, if not, I just want to give a brief explanation as to what that website is as well. Here, stand by just a second while I share my screen. All right. Yep, please do. There we go. 1 second here, gang. All right. So before I get into the big interview bit, I just want to really briefly cover ONET, just so you guys have an idea of what it is. So ONET is actually a federally funded tool that allows people to get job descriptions and other job data about various professions, right? So let's just say, for example, you have a dishwasher that's looking to get out of dishwashing, maybe get into something a little more office focused or something like that, right? If I type in dishwasher into our occupation search here, it'll actually pull up various tasks, technology skills, work activities, and context that dishwashers would use on a regular basis. Okay. And these can be just copy pasted straight into a resume. I know we're not talking about resume building right now, but it's kind of adjacent. So, it's a really great resource for those people that aren't like wordsmiths, so to speak, right? They're not the most naturally talented writers. They can copy paste these job descriptions and tasks onto their resume to help them build. Well, Big Interview, the focus of what we're going to be talking about today, actually uses the descriptions and data from ONET to help create effective interview questions for people in specific industries, and helps people create their resume based off of this information as well. So that's just a little bit, that's the main sidebar I wanted to get into really quickly. Now, when we're talking about Big Interview here, folks, I'm going to start by being logged in to New Mexico Jobs. Okay, I know some of you may or may not be currently registered in New Mexico Jobs, but one of the nice things is if you have a New Mexico Jobs account, you already have a Big Interview account created. So when you guys do get around to creating your New Mexico Jobs account, for those of you that haven't yet, you will already automatically have a Big Interview account created through the state of New Mexico. So New Mexico DWS, right, pays for licenses for every person who signs up for New Mexico Jobs in Big Interview. Now, when you guys are logged into your New Mexico Jobs, if you have one already made, it's really easy to find where to go for Big Interview. Okay, you just go to the top left-hand side hamburger menu. Okay, and in your quick menu, right at the bottom here, you'll see interview training. Okay, you can click on that, and that will automatically pop open Big Interview. You just have to make sure that you do have your pop-up blocker disabled for New Mexico jobs. Once you click on interview training, you can select either the fast track or the mastery track. It doesn't matter which. And then once you click on that, it'll launch Big Interview. Okay. Oop. So give me 1 second here. There we go. So now that we are in Big Interview, there's a few different things that I want to talk about. Okay. Big Interview is broken up into 3 main sections. So you've got your Learn section here, your Practice section, and your Resume Builder. We talked about the Resume Builder a little bit last time during our resume workshop. We won't be going through it too much today. The main sections we're going to focus on today are going to be Learn and Practice. Now, I definitely recommend starting with Learn, because before you actually jump in to getting ready to kind of do a practice interview, you want to know how you're going to answer those interview questions, right? Just like Tony was talking about, it's about preparing first. And Big Interview has a lot of really good resources for letting you guys prepare for the interview before you even start practicing. All right. Now, in the Learn section, you have 2 options here: the interview curriculum and the question library. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and click on the interview curriculum here. And I'm going to go ahead and just get out of this demographic survey. Okay. So you'll notice a few different things. All of these different sections that you see within the interview curriculum section are going to be video lessons. And these video lessons are actually with Pam Skillings, who's probably the preeminent name in terms of American interview preparation. She's been an interview coach for a very long time and has a lot of really good insight to share in these videos. There's not anybody better, in my opinion, that you could really go to. So up at the top here, you guys see the fast track and the mastery track. Okay. The fast track is going to be your quick and dirty. By quick and dirty, I mean like an hour, so it's not that quick, but still decently. Okay. Set of instructions, best practices for the interview, kind of like the first video that Tony shared just a little bit ago. So when I click on it, I'll just kind of show you guys what it sort of looks like. I'm not going to have it play too much here, but you guys can kind of see it, how it's kind of playing here, right? By the way, I don't know if my audio is sharing. Are you guys hearing my audio? Yes? Okay, great. This is just an example, right? And you guys can see as we go down here, you can see it's got a best practices section, the types of interviews you might be preparing for, types of interviewers you might see, how to answer any sort of inappropriate questions, what to wear, right? Looking at the job description so that you can do effective research. All of these are different videos that you have in the the fast track. All right, and it will also have a little quiz and a practice section for you to record a practice interview question in this. So I definitely recommend taking an hour or so and going through that fast track, because it's really valuable to just get you at that base level of competency for an interview. Then, if you have a little extra time, closer to like 6 hours or so, you can also go through the mastery track, which is the deep dive, right? It'll give you information about every little thing you can think of interview related, right? General best practices, tips, research tip pointers as well, okay? But that's not all that Big Interview has, right? I know that on the New Mexico job site, it just said start with the fast track or the mastery track. Those are great. But we all know that every person that's looking for a job is completely different. All of you guys are completely different, right? So we've got a whole series of additional video lessons. So there's interview playbooks, the job search curriculum, the written curriculum, the resume curriculum, negotiation curriculum, and the first 90 days curriculum. So the interview playbooks we're going to start with here. In the interview playbooks, you have a whole bunch of video lessons tailored to a bunch of different underserved populations. So are you fresh out of college? You just got your new shiny bachelor's degree and you're ready to go find a job? Here's how you can alleviate employer concerns about maybe your lower level of experience as a new graduate. Um, are you trying to get a job within the same company that you currently work? Right? Here's an internal interview set of lessons. Are you transitioning out of military service? Here's a military transition set of lessons. Do you have any sort of disability, or are you neurodivergent? Or are you trying to get out of one industry to get into another industry? Here's disabilities, neurodiversity, and career change, right? Are you an ESL job seeker? Right? Have you been maybe a stay-at-home mom for 18 years, right? And you have a rather large gap on your resume. Here's a resume and CV gap set of lessons. Maybe you have that fancy doctorate, but you're looking for something a little bit different than what you've been doing, right? If you're overqualified, here are lessons. Or the one that I know, this one helped me a bunch when I was looking through Big Interview initially. Are you just an introvert? Are you a little bit kind of shy naturally? Here is a great set of video lessons to show you how to address that. Or are you coming out of being justice involved, right? Adult reentry is right here as well. Okay. Does that make sense, everybody? Any questions about any of these so far? Yeah, feel free to unmute or, yeah, I think Tony's got the chat up here as well. Okay. All right, I'll keep going here. So I'm going to go back to our learn section one more time. All right, so those are just the interview playbooks. Those are those ways to kind of adapt to questions about what's different, what's unique about you. These other things, you've got the job search curriculum. This is going to be video lessons for how you should be searching for jobs, where you should be searching for jobs, managing your online presence, that sort of thing. Make sure that when an employer Googles your name, they don't, see the video of you in your drunken bar fight downtown or something else, right? You make sure that they see your best side when they see your online presence. Okay. And then it's also a resume curriculum talking about how to build an effective resume, and a written curriculum talking about cover letters and other required writing for job searching. The negotiation curriculum, how to respectfully bring up with a prospective employer, right? Anything that needs to be negotiated, like salary, etc. And then this is another one that I'm really fond of, is the first 90 days curriculum. All right, so I went through all of these lessons and I aced that interview, right? Now what? What do I do now that I got the job? This will go over best practices for setting that first formal meeting to set up your employee evaluation with your new manager. This will talk about how to network and build a new group of work friends at your new position, etc. Okay. So I definitely recommend spending as much time as you feel comfortable with in both the fast track and the mastery track, as well as all of these awesome video lessons to just get you job ready, to get you interview ready. Okay? Any questions so far, guys? What do you guys think? Nothing yet? Okay. That is fine. It definitely is. Yep. And we're just getting started, right? So that is the learn section. That's what you'll find in the, just the YouTube section, so to speak, the video lessons with Pam Skillings. But there's another part we're going to talk about here, and this is the practice section. Okay. Now, this is the part that a lot of people maybe that throws a lot of people off, because how do you guys practice for interviews? I just kind of want to hear when you have an interview coming up, or when you've had interviews in the past, how have you practiced? Have you used the mirror, or gone to mom and dad, or your spouse or somebody else and said, "Hey, ask me interview questions"? Anybody? What have you all done?
I've used the mirror.
Okay. I mean, so have I, right? I've definitely used the mirror in the past, and it's okay, right? It's not bad. You get an idea of your facial expressions, etc. Um, oh, okay. So Tay says you've used Glassdoor and Indeed to kind of prep answers as well, and that's good. One of the coolest things about Big Interview are is the practice section. Okay. In the practice section, you can actually record video answers, right, with either an easy, medium, or hard AI interviewer, right? And then the AI will analyze your facial features, uh, your posture, right? How you're standing, your use of hand gestures, your use of filler words, your use of pauses, your eye contact, right? All of those different things, and give you customized feedback. And one of the coolest things about that is you never have to deal with judgment, right? You never have to deal with actually doing all of those things in front of another person. It's just the AI system, right, analyzing that based off of best practices, right, and then giving you that constructive feedback in a way that'll let you kind of continually improve. Okay, so I just want to kind of show you guys really quickly how this works. I'm going to have to turn off my uh, camera for Zoom here because otherwise it won't let me record on Big Interview, but I'll just kind of show you how it goes. So I'll go ahead and practice with Freddie here. And this is going to be our general interview. So this is like a top 10, interview question greatest hits, so to speak, okay? Like a top 10 most commonly used interview questions. So here's our first basic one, and I'll show you guys kind of how it works. So you start by clicking on the play button. Okay, that's a really basic question, right? Just tell me about yourself. Then what you do is you go over here to the start recording option. All right. Big Interview may ask you to kind of give it your browser permission to use your webcam and microphone. And I'll just give you guys like a sample thing here so you can kind of just see. So my name is Joshua George. I'm a workforce learning and development specialist with the Department of Workforce Solutions, fancy word for trainer. I have been with the agency for about 2.5 years at this point, and I also have a lot of training experience in the private sector. I'm really excited to contribute to your organization's success. Then once you've finished, right, with that recording, you just go ahead and hit stop recording, and you can either re-record it if you hate it, or you can hit save answer here. All right, so I'll just go ahead and click save answer. It will take a second and it's going to upload that to Big Interview. And what you'll have to do is actually go down through all of these interview questions. So I have the little green check mark right here, right? I click the next question. And then it asks me why I'm interested. Then I have to go through and I have to record another answer, right? And I go all the way down to 10. Once I've completed this set, and I don't have time to do it, all on camera here right now, as much as I'd love to to play theater for you guys. Once it's gotten all of that information, you can actually go to your profile here and go to the analytics section. And I don't know if this practice profile has many answers recorded. It doesn't have a whole lot. But after it's gotten a good feel for how you answered those questions, right, it will give you like kind of a score. It'll say, here's how you're doing on your filler words. You used too many times. You had too many awkward pauses. You didn't make enough eye contact with the camera, right? All of those sorts of things, and tell you the ways that you can kind of improve. Does that make sense, everybody? And the nice thing is, it does this without you having to maybe get nervous about asking a friend or family member. And you also know that the feedback that you're getting is based off of industry best practices and not just mom's opinion, right? Your spouse's opinion. So you also kind of get that more objective feedback, okay, from a Big Interview. It's really neat. And that's not everything. That's just one example of a practice set in the general practice set. One of the other coolest things about Big Interview is that if you go down to this industry tab here, right? Let me click on it there. It has a series of most popular industry specific interview questions. So like banking, let's say you're trying to get a teller job. Let's say you're trying to get a personal banker job, or you're trying to get into construction, right? You're trying to be a tradesman. If you're trying to get into hospitality, right? Human resources, etc. It has industry specific questions based off of what's commonly used in those industries for interviews. And if it's not one that's on this first little section, you might have noticed there's another tab right next to it that says ONET database. Every single job that is listed in ONET is also on Big Interview, which is almost any job you can think of, right? I used to run a session where I asked my learners to kind of try to stump me. Hey, name a job and let's see if we can find it in Big Interview. There were very few. I remember there's not one for rodeo clowns. But aside from that, it has just about any job that you can think of, okay, right here, available for you to get a customized set of interview questions for. So I can let me just pick community and social service, child, family, and school social workers. Maybe you want to get a job with CYFD or something like that, right? I can click on that, and it's going to pull up a practice interview with Liz with industry-specific questions about social work. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Okay, I see some thumbs up. No, and that's great, guys. I see some head shaking as well, which is good, or nods. You can also ask different like there's also a section for government positions. So if you're trying to get a government job, right, there are several different options there. Interviews for school programs right here, right? Interview questions based on specific competencies or skill sets are also right here. Veteran focused questions. And then this part down here is also pretty neat. It's the custom sets where if you're not entirely sure what sort of or if there's like a question that you specifically want to practice on that you can think of yourself, you can customize, right? Any of these different custom sets as well to practice with the AI interviewer. Okay. You also can go here to view your already recorded videos. So if you just want to look at it yourself and be be your own worst critic, which is sometimes helpful, right? You can go and review your existing recordings. Okay. Any questions so far, guys? Does this make good sense? Okay. All right, and then the last thing that I just wanted to really briefly mention is if you're not quite to that interview yet and you just need to build a killer resume, right over here is the resume builder, which will use that same ONET database to pull existing job descriptions, skills summaries, and it just really help you fill out your resume. And one of the coolest things is a big part of getting an interview is making sure that your resume is customized for the job that you're applying for, right? This tool will customize a resume for any job that you can think of within ONET, and you can get it done in 5 minutes easy. Okay, so I do also recommend using that, adding that to your resume building kind of repertoire, so to speak.
So we just, again, we appreciate everybody participating. We really appreciate your feedback on if this was helpful, but not helpful, if there was something that we missed that you would have liked to have seen, if you could provide us feedback using this QR code. The feedback is anonymous. We have no way of connecting it back to any individual. But we use this for future trainings. If you've got a suggestion for a training you would like to hear in the future, you can reach out to the Serve New Mexico team, or you can also add it to the feedback survey, and we'll share it with the Serve New Mexico team as well. So again, we thank you for your time today, and we appreciate working with you all. We've appreciated getting to meet some of you in person as well, and we look forward to being with you again in another couple of months.